Throughout your personal and professional life, you'll encounter a variety of ethical dilemmas. In this interview with Tom Boatner, retired Chief of Fire Operations for the Bureau of Land Management, we'll examine an ethical dilemma he faced as a smoke jumper squad leader early in his career.
When I was a new smoke jumper squad leader, I traveled with a group of smoke jumpers from my base to another base in response to a fairly large fire bust that was going on. Turned out to be a bust that lasted for a couple weeks, and it was a fire bust of historic proportions at that time. Eventually I ended up on a 10 to 12,000 acre fire with 16 jumpers. Other than us, the fire was unstaffed. The jumpers came from bases around the country and included 3 or 4 jumpers from my base that as a squad leader I was responsible for. And we were working for a very experienced senior smoke jumper leader from the base that we were operating out of. He was the jumper in charge in the IC until we were replaced. The fire was about 10 to 12,000 acres, and our mission was to anchor in and flank and secure as much perimeter as we could until we were replaced within a day or two by a Type 2 team and a group of fire resources that they would bring. So we jumped the fire in the late afternoon and established an anchor point and began working up the left flank. And we were working for a senior smoke jumper and a squad leader from the base that we were operating out of. He was in charge. So as that first evening went on, a little tension developed over a small group of us up at the front working pretty hard and driving on. And this senior jumper, the guy who was in charge at the back with the rest of the crew, he just didn't seem to really want to work that hard. He seemed to be focusing on not working. And I remember being puzzled by that because I thought, you know, we got a great opportunity here to contain an impressive amount of line. And when whoever replaces us shows up, we can have left this great impression that 16 smoke jumpers can knock off an amazing amount of work. So I was not happy that this tension was there. Ultimately, we worked that night till 1 or 2 in the morning and then slept in the dirt for a couple hours to get a little break. It was cold, we didn't have any gear with us, and we got a little bit of rest, but it wasn't very high quality. Next day, again, we worked at securing perimeter all day long, and that tension existed all day long between working hard and driving forward and hanging back and taking it easy. And I remember being upset that we weren't more focused on getting the work done and driving on. Second evening, a light helicopter came out to bump some food and water up to us from our jump spot because we were almost out. And I listened for the jumper in charge to ask him to bring up our sleeping bags so we could get a little bit more high quality rest that second night. He didn't ask, and I called him on the radio and asked him, are you going to have the helicopter bump our sleeping bags up? And I remember hearing that he was not happy with me for bringing it up because I don't really think he intended to ask for our sleeping bags. I think he intended to sleep in the dirt again. Anyways, we got the sleeping bags, got 4 or 5 hours of decent sleep, and worked through about the middle of the next day when we were relieved by this incoming Type 2 team and other resources, and we traveled back to the base that we're operating out of. At that point, he gave us a timesheet for the work we had done, and I was pretty amazed and fairly angry to get a timesheet that showed us working 48 hours straight, from the minute we jumped the fire to the minute we arrived back at the jump base. And I really felt like a couple of our core values were in question. We have a duty, I believe, to work as hard as we can, and we have a duty to be honest in the way we log the time we work. I didn't believe he'd done either. He hadn't worked hard enough, and he'd been dishonest in the way he logged his time.